What if Hollywood's biggest stars spent more money hiding family secrets than making movies behind the Oscars, mansions, and million-dollar smiles were scandals so shocking they sound completely made up? Secret relationships, family betrayals, and careers destroyed overnight. Tonight we're opening 9 of Hollywood's darkest files, and trust me, the movies were never this crazy. Number 1. Charlie Chaplin, the genius whose private life never stopped making headlines. When people hear the name Charlie Chaplin, they picture the charming little tramp, a bowler hat, a cane, and one of the greatest entertainers in film history. But if Hollywood handed out awards for controversy, Chaplin might have needed a second trophy shelf. By the 1920s, Chaplin wasn't just a movie star. He was practically a one-man entertainment empire. His films made millions, audiences adored him, and studios treated him like royalty. Yet while the world laughed at his on-screen adventures, newspapers were becoming increasingly fascinated by his personal life. And let's just say those headlines weren't always comedy. One relationship in particular sparked enormous public attention. In 1924, Chaplin married Lita Grey, a young actress whose age became a major topic of discussion across the country. What followed was one of the most talked-about celebrity divorces of its era, complete with explosive headlines, courtroom drama, and a financial settlement so large it left jaws on the floor. In modern dollars, it would equal many millions today. Apparently, even in old Hollywood, breakups could be more expensive than movie productions. As the years passed, Chaplin's relationships continued to attract scrutiny from both the media and government investigators. His fame made every personal decision front-page news, turning his private life into a never-ending public debate. Some saw a misunderstood genius. Others questioned whether enormous fame had allowed him to live by a different set of rules. Whatever side people took, one thing became clear. Charlie Chaplin's legacy would never be defined solely by his movies. Decades after his final curtain call, historians still debate the man behind the mustache. His story remains a fascinating reminder that while talent can make someone a legend, public curiosity has a way of following celebrities long after the cameras stop rolling. Number 2. Marlon Brando, the gunshot that shattered a Hollywood dynasty. For decades, Marlon Brando was Hollywood royalty. As the legendary star of The Godfather and one of the most influential actors of all time, he built a career that most performers could only dream about. Fame, fortune, and global admiration followed him everywhere. To the public, Brando seemed larger than life, a man whose talent could conquer any challenge. But behind the gates of his sprawling estate, a very different story was unfolding. Everything changed on a shocking night in 1990, when a fatal shooting inside the Brando family home made headlines around the world. The incident involved Brando's son, Christian Brando, and instantly transformed a private family crisis into a public spectacle. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about award-winning performances or cinematic achievements. Instead, reporters and television crews focused on the growing turmoil surrounding one of Hollywood's most famous families. As court proceedings unfolded, painful details about years of family struggles, emotional instability, and personal conflicts emerged into public view. Brando invested enormous resources trying to help his son navigate the legal battle, but even his wealth and influence could not stop the tragedy from leaving a permanent mark on the family. The situation grew even more heartbreaking as additional challenges affected other members of the Brando household, turning what had once appeared to be a powerful dynasty into a symbol of personal loss and regret. In later years, Brando openly reflected on the difficulties within his family and the mistakes he believed he had made as a father. His story serves as one of Hollywood's most sobering reminders that success on screen does not always translate into stability at home. Marlon Brando created some of cinema's greatest masterpieces, but the struggles within his own family became a chapter that fame, money, and even legendary status could never fully rewrite. Number 3. Mackenzie Phillips, the secret that shattered a music empire. Imagine growing up with a father the world worshipped as a musical genius. For Mackenzie Phillips, daughter of legendary musician John Phillips, life seemed like the ultimate Hollywood dream. Fame, fortune, exclusive parties, and front-row access to music history, she had it all. At least that's what everyone believed. Behind the glamorous headlines, however, Mackenzie later described a far more complicated reality. While fans celebrated one of the most influential music figures of his generation, she was struggling with personal challenges, addiction, and emotional turmoil that followed her well into adulthood. The contrast between the public image and private life of the family would eventually become impossible to ignore. Everything changed in 2009 when Mackenzie released her memoir, High on Arrival. The book sparked widespread media attention as she shared deeply personal experiences and reflections about her upbringing. Overnight conversations shifted from hit records and rock and roll success to questions about family dynamics, power, and the hidden pressures that can exist behind celebrity status. Hollywood was stunned, and public debate quickly followed. What makes this story remarkable is not just the controversy that surrounded it, but the decades of silence beforehand. Mackenzie's journey became one of recovery, self-discovery, and finding the courage to speak openly about her past. In the end, her story serves as a reminder that fame can create the illusion of a perfect life, but behind even the brightest spotlight, families can face struggles that the public never sees. Number 4. Michael Jackson, the Neverland controversy that divided the world. By the early 1990s, Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop, he was one of the most famous people on earth. With record-breaking albums, sold-out tours, and a fortune worth hundreds of millions, he seemed untouchable. Then he built Neverland Ranch, a $35 million fantasy world filled with amusement rides, exotic animals, and attractions designed to look like every child's dream come true. But over time, Neverland became known for something far more controversial than its Ferris wheel. As Jackson's fame continued to grow, questions about his relationships with certain young visitors began attracting intense media attention. What started as rumors soon evolved into lawsuits, investigations, and non-stop headlines. Supporters argued that Jackson was simply trying to recreate the childhood he never had. Critics believed the situation raised serious concerns that deserved closer examination. Suddenly, Neverland was no longer being discussed as a magical playground. It had become the center of one of Hollywood's biggest controversies. The legal battles that followed lasted for years and cost an astonishing amount of money. Lawyers, investigators, public relations teams, and settlements reportedly consumed tens of millions of dollars. Jackson eventually faced a highly publicized criminal trial and was found not guilty of all charges. Yet even after the verdict, the public debate refused to disappear. It seemed every answer created two new questions. For a man who could sell out stadiums in minutes, convincing everyone proved impossible. When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, the controversy didn't end with him. Lawsuits, documentaries, and public debates continued long afterward, keeping Neverland in the headlines for years. Whether viewed as a misunderstood superstar or one of entertainment's most controversial figures, Jackson's story remains a powerful example of how fame, fortune, and public scrutiny can collide. Because sometimes the most expensive attraction in Hollywood isn't a theme park, it's the cost of defending a legacy. Did you already know about the Neverland controversy before watching this video? If you've heard about this case before, let me know by dropping a 4 in the comments. And if this is your first time on learning about it, tell us what surprised you the most. Number 5. Jerry Lee Lewis, the marriage that brought a rock empire crashing down. In 1958, Jerry Lee Lewis seemed unstoppable. His records dominated the charts, fans packed every venue, and many industry insiders believed he was the only performer capable of challenging Elvis Presley for the crown of rock and roll. With his electrifying stage presence and fearless personality, Lewis wasn't just a star, he was becoming a phenomenon. From the outside, it looked like nothing could derail his rise to the top. That illusion shattered during a highly anticipated tour of England. Upon arriving in London, reporters became fascinated by details of Lewis's personal life, particularly his controversial marriage to his young cousin, Myra Gale Brown. What began as routine media coverage quickly exploded into an international scandal. Newspapers filled their front pages with the story, and within days, the focus shifted from his music to questions about his private decisions. The public reaction was immediate, and the backlash was far greater than anyone expected. The consequences were devastating. Concerts were canceled, radio stations stopped promoting his music, and business partners rushed to distance themselves from the controversy. Historians estimate that the financial damage eventually reached tens of millions of dollars in lost opportunities, endorsements, and future earnings. Imagine stepping off a plane as the future king of rock and roll and stepping back on as the center of one of the industry's biggest public relations disasters. Even Hollywood writers might have rejected that script for being too unbelievable. Although Lewis continued performing and recording music for many years, the shadow of that controversy never completely disappeared. What should have been the beginning of a legendary reign became one of entertainment history's most dramatic cautionary tales. His story remains a powerful reminder that fame can build an empire, but public trust determines how long that empire survives. Sometimes the biggest threat to a superstar isn't a competitor, it's a personal decision that changes everything overnight. Number 6. Angelina Jolie and James Haven, the Oscar kiss that shocked Hollywood. Hollywood has witnessed its share of unforgettable Oscar moments. Emotional speeches surprise winners, awkward jokes that landed with the grace of a falling piano. But in 2000, Angelina Jolie and her brother James Haven delivered a moment that had the media talking for years, and it had nothing to do with movies. Fresh off her Academy Award win, Jolie appeared on the red carpet celebrating alongside her brother. Then came a public display of affection and a heartfelt declaration about how much she loved him. Within hours, entertainment reporters went into overdrive. Headlines exploded, talk shows couldn't stop discussing it, and suddenly, one of Hollywood's biggest stars found herself at the center of a cultural debate. The Oscars had ended, but the Gossip Olympics were just getting started. What made the story so fascinating was that there were no lawsuits, criminal investigations, or courtroom battles. Instead, the controversy centered on public perception. Many observers viewed the siblings' bond as unusually intense, while others argued that the media had blown an emotional family moment completely out of proportion. Growing up through a difficult family environment and the highly publicized separation of their parents, Angelina and James had long relied heavily on one another for support. Still, that explanation did little to slow the tabloid frenzy. The incident followed Jolie for years as she worked to transform her public image from Hollywood rebel to respected actress, filmmaker, and humanitarian. Meanwhile, James largely stepped away from the spotlight, remaining one of the most private members of a very public family. Looking back, the Oscar kiss remains one of Hollywood's strangest media storms, a reminder that sometimes the biggest scandals aren't created in courtrooms or police reports. Sometimes they're created by a single moment, 1,000 cameras, and millions of people deciding they know exactly what it meant. Number 7. Errol Flynn, the Hollywood hero with a very complicated legacy. In the 1930s and 1940s, Errol Flynn wasn't just a movie star. He was Hollywood's definition of a leading man. Handsome, charismatic, and famous for playing fearless heroes, Flynn seemed to have everything. But while audiences watched him rescue damsels on screen, real-life headlines were beginning to create a very different story. In 1942, Flynn became the center of one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history when he faced highly publicized allegations involving 2 teenage girls. Newspapers covered every detail, reporters camped outside courtrooms, and the case quickly became front-page news across America. Although Flynn was ultimately acquitted, the trial permanently changed his public image. Suddenly, the charming swashbuckler was no longer just a movie hero. He was one of the most controversial figures in the entertainment industry. The legal battle cost a fortune, but the damage to his reputation may have been even greater. Years later, Flynn continued attracting criticism because of relationships that raised eyebrows among both the public and the press. One of the most controversial involved Beverly Odland, a teenager whose relationship with Flynn became the subject of widespread media attention. Critics argued that Hollywood's biggest stars often operated under a different set of rules than ordinary people. By the late 1950s, Flynn's glamorous lifestyle, legal expenses, and endless scandals had taken a serious toll. The man who once ruled the box office found himself spending more time fighting headlines than making movies. Looking back, Errol Flynn's story isn't just about fame. It's about what happens when celebrity status becomes so powerful that people stop asking difficult questions. And in Hollywood, those unanswered questions often become the biggest story of all. Number 8. Bobby Christina Brown. Hollywood has seen plenty of unusual family stories, but few are as heartbreaking as the one involving Bobby Christina Brown, the only daughter of music icon Whitney Houston. Growing up surrounded by fame, fortune, and celebrity attention, Bobby Christina seemed destined to inherit a legacy worth millions. But behind the headlines, a complicated relationship was developing that would eventually become the center of controversy and legal battles. Years earlier, Whitney Houston welcomed Nick Gordon into her home and helped raise him alongside Bobby Christina. Although he was never legally adopted, the two grew up under the same roof and were often viewed by the public as part of the same family. Following Whitney's sudden passing in 2012, however, their relationship took an unexpected turn. When Bobby Christina and Nick publicly announced they were romantically involved, the reaction was immediate. Family members, fans, and media outlets were stunned. Suddenly, a story that once looked like a close family bond became one of Hollywood's most debated relationships. The controversy intensified after Bobby Christina's tragic passing in 2015. What followed was not just public grief, but a fierce legal battle over responsibility, finances, and inheritance. Members of the Houston family accused Nick Gordon of exploiting his position of trust and benefiting financially from his relationship with Bobby Christina. In 2016, a civil court awarded a judgment worth tens of millions of dollars against Gordon after he failed to properly defend himself in court. The ruling sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. What makes this story so tragic is that it began with a family trying to help a young boy in need. Instead, it ended in lawsuits, heartbreak, and unanswered questions. Bobby Christina's story remains a sobering reminder that fame and money can complicate even the closest relationships. Sometimes the most painful Hollywood tragedies don't begin on a movie set. They begin inside a family home. Number 9. Drew Barrymore. Most children spend their early years worrying about homework cartoons and what snack comes after dinner. Drew Barrymore, on the other hand, was navigating Hollywood before most kids learn long division. After becoming a global sensation in E.T. at just 7 years old, Drew quickly transformed into one of the most recognizable child stars in America. Fame arrived early, but so did the pressure that came with it. Behind the flashing cameras and magazine covers, Drew's childhood looked very different from the fairy tale many people imagined. According to her later interviews and memoirs, she was introduced to adult environments at an age when most children were still playing with toys. Nightclubs, celebrity parties, and constant media attention became part of her everyday life. Instead of being protected from Hollywood, she was living in the middle of it. If childhood came with a parental guidance label, somebody clearly misplaced the instruction manual. The consequences arrived quickly. By her early teens, Drew was facing serious personal struggles and spending time in rehabilitation programs while trying to regain control of her life. Then came a decision that shocked Hollywood. At just 14 years old, she petitioned the court for legal emancipation, seeking independence from her mother's financial and legal authority. The move made headlines across America and turned Drew into one of the youngest stars ever to legally separate her personal affairs from a parent. Unlike many child actors whose careers disappeared after early fame, Drew fought her way back. She rebuilt her career, became a successful actress, producer, and television host, and eventually created the stable family life she never had growing up. Her story isn't just about celebrity or scandal. It's about survival. In a town where many child stars become cautionary tales, Drew Barrymore became something far rarer, proof that even after a difficult start, it's possible to rewrite the ending. Sometimes the greatest Hollywood comeback isn't a movie role. It's taking back control of your own life. Number 10. Macaulay Culkin. At the height of his fame, Macaulay Culkin was one of Hollywood's biggest success stories. His movies generated hundreds of millions of dollars. Studios competed for his attention, and his name became a global brand. To the public, he appeared to be living a dream filled with fame, wealth, and endless opportunity. But behind the scenes, another story was unfolding, one centered on family money and control. As Culkin's fortune grew, reports of conflict within the family began attracting media attention. What started as a remarkable Hollywood success gradually evolved into a struggle over finances, career decisions, and who should control the empire built around one young star. The larger the paychecks became, the more complicated the family dynamics appeared. In Hollywood, money often changes relationships, and in this case, the stakes were measured in millions. Eventually, the situation escalated into a legal battle over control of Culkin's earnings and future. Court filings and news reports revealed growing disputes surrounding the management of his fortune. Suddenly, one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment found himself navigating lawyers' legal paperwork and public scrutiny instead of movie sets and premieres. Imagine becoming one of Hollywood's highest earners only to discover that protecting your own money could become a full-time job. Unlike many former child stars whose stories ended in tragedy, Culkin chose a different path. He stepped away from the spotlight, regained control over his affairs, and built a life on his own terms. His story remains a powerful reminder that fame can create incredible opportunities, but it can also place enormous pressure on family relationships. In the end, the biggest battle wasn't for another blockbuster role, it was for ownership of his future and the fortune he had worked so hard to earn. Number 11. Britney Spears. For years, Britney Spears was one of the biggest stars on the planet. Her albums sold millions, her tours generated fortunes, and her name became a global brand worth hundreds of millions of dollars. From the outside, she appeared to be living the ultimate celebrity dream. But behind the flashing cameras and sold-out arenas, a legal arrangement was quietly transforming her life into one of Hollywood's most controversial family battles. After a series of highly publicized personal struggles, Britney was placed under a court-approved conservatorship. The arrangement gave her father, Jamie Spears, significant control over her finances, business affairs, and many major life decisions. What was expected to be a temporary measure eventually lasted for more than a decade. As the years passed, fans began asking an uncomfortable question. How could one of the world's most successful entertainers continue earning millions while having limited control over so many aspects of her own life? The controversy exploded when court documents, media investigations, and Britney's own statements brought the conservatorship into the public spotlight. Supporters argued that the arrangement had gone far beyond its original purpose, while others defended it as a necessary safeguard. Soon, the hashtag #FreeBritney movement turned into a global phenomenon. Millions of fans followed every court hearing, every legal filing, and every new revelation. Imagine filling stadiums with screaming fans, while a courtroom battle over your independence becomes bigger news than your latest album. Only Hollywood could produce a storyline like that. After years of legal challenges and intense public scrutiny, the conservatorship finally came to an end. The case became one of the most famous celebrity legal battles in modern history and sparked worldwide conversations about family control, personal freedom, and financial power. Britney Spears' story remains a reminder that even immense fame and fortune cannot guarantee control over your own life. Sometimes the toughest battle isn't against critics or competitors, it's against the people closest to you. Number 12. Ariel Winter. For years, Ariel Winter was known as the smart, lovable daughter on the hit sitcom Modern Family. While millions of viewers watched her grow up on television, few realized that away from the cameras, a much more serious family conflict was unfolding. What appeared to be another Hollywood success story would eventually become a public legal battle involving family control, personal independence, and allegations that shocked fans. As Ariel's career continued to grow, reports of tension within her family began attracting media attention. The situation escalated when concerns were raised about her well-being and living environment. Soon, what had started as private family disagreements evolved into a highly publicized court matter. Instead of discussing television ratings and award nominations, entertainment news outlets were suddenly focused on legal filings, family disputes, and questions about who should be responsible for the young actress's future. The conflict reached a turning point when Ariel was removed from her mother's care and placed under the guardianship of her older sister, Chanel Gray. Court proceedings and public statements brought the family's struggles into the spotlight, creating headlines across Hollywood. Imagine starring in one of television's most successful comedies while dealing with courtroom drama that felt anything but funny. Even sitcom writers might have struggled to make that storyline believable. Over time, Ariel became increasingly vocal about her desire to build an independent life and move beyond the family conflict that had dominated so many headlines. While the legal battle eventually faded from public attention, the impact remained significant. Her story became another example of how fame can magnify family problems and turn private struggles into public spectacles. In the end, Ariel Winter's journey wasn't just about surviving Hollywood. It was about finding stability, independence, and a voice of her own in the middle of a very public family storm.